did already have a Temple of Triumph, so you had a way to kind of add Scrylands to the deck. We're still getting another card that's really good against one of the popular decks.
We are underway. Andrew Tenjum's on the play. His opponent, Chris Yarbrough, is on a 6-card hand. It's going to be 2 Detention Spheres, 2 lands, a Verdict, and I believe last card is a Dissolve. So this will really depend on what Tenjum has in his hand.
Yeah, and I don't think he has cards like Divination that can kind of help him draw out of this a little bit. So he's going to be in a tough spot here because he doesn't have a lot of lands to work with, and he also doesn't have a lot of gas. So he's basically, he needs to not only draw action spells like Sphinx Revelation and Jace, but he also needs to just keep making his land drops. So let's see what Chris can manage coming up.
Yeah, so he takes the Detention Sphere, and now we do see a red land in Chris's hand. He drew a Temple of Triumph. Right now, Tenjum believes he's just playing against a blue-white deck. He actually didn't see that 3rd color.
Yeah, so Chris did not lead with the Scryland.
Yeah.
And here we see another Thoughtseize, so we might get the other Detention. If he went for the first one, you'd imagine.
Yeah, and that's what the play of getting the first Detention Sphere certainly made me think he was going to take the second one. Presumably, he's clearing the way for an Underworld Connections or similar card. Yeah,
one of those cards. We've seen it all day today. Very effective against blue-white decks. So let's see if that is in fact his plan. And there's a 3rd Detention Sphere from Chris. So if that is in fact Andrew's plan, he's going to be quite disappointed.
Absolutely. So Temple of Triumph played, scried to the top, and we'll see what the Tenjum does hit the 3rd line. He's going to shock for Godless Shrine down to 14.
Now he doesn't have Night Veil Spectre, so.
Yeah, it looks like it's actually going to be a Bramaz, King of Ereskos.
So Bramaz comes down. He knows that Chris does have the Supreme Verdict, so it will eventually get answered, but let's see if Chris decides to use the Detention Sphere or not instead.
Yeah, whether or not he can afford to take that 1 point of damage. A lot of it might hinge on whether or not Chris actually draws that 4th land and has that coming.
Yep.
We'll see. Bramaz was made for the turn. 4th land was drawn by Chris, but without hesitation, he Detention Spheres it.
Yeah, and I like that play. You want to just get rid of it right away. God forbid Andrew draws like a Thoughtseize or Duress.
Sure.
Suddenly, even if you still have the Detention Sphere and he takes the Supreme Verdict instead, you leave him with a cat token. So might as well just, if you're going to deal with it right now.
And it looks like Yarbrough has run Andrew out of threats. For the time being, Andrew did not hit a 4th land and was forced just to pass his turn back. In response, Yarbrough is just continuing to develop his mana base. He has no revelations or card drawers yet, but so far he is safe on the board.
Yeah, he has a Gilgate. It looks like his hand is just a bunch of removal spells, Desecration Demon, and Blood Baron.
Yeah, he's got a Bio Blight and a Devour Flesh in hand. So Yarbrough makes a 5th land. Now we'll try to see Tenjum reload here. It's going to be Desecration Demon. That will meet with a Dissolve. And Chris will continue to just develop in peace, keeping a card on top.
So it looks like he has that Supreme Verdict still in his hand. Oh, Andrew played a Temple of Silence, so he's scrying on his turn. So.
We are back, and it looks like that was a Revelation as the draw for Yarbrough.
So it looks like his hand is Supreme Verdict, Strings of Revelation, so pretty good shape for Yarbrough here. He's going to be able to draw 3 at the end of Andrew's turn, and he still has an answer to that Blood Baron as well.
Absolutely. So Yarbrough up to 23. Not a huge Sphinx's Revelation, but a pretty good one. He's drawn Dissolve among his 3 cards there.
So perfect. If you have a 7th mana, he could actually cast Dissolve. Oh,
yeah,
he drew
an Elspeth. Drew an Elspeth. So even better, he has an Elspeth here. And I would think we might just see Elspeth get made on this.
Yeah, I might as well cast Elspeth and then down take it to deal with the Blood Baron that way. I mean, it's an efficient use of your mana, plus you protect your Elspeth from a card like Thoughtseize.
Right. It looks like he's going to go with just the Verdict, and then leaving up Azorius Charm, so maybe to perhaps draw a card.
Interesting. So he's got that Elspeth in his hand. Let's see if he can dodge a Thoughtseize.
It looks like he will. End step, he's going to draw a card.
Looks like it might have been a Jace. So everything going right for Chris right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It was Assemble the Legion, which is actually one of those trump cards against black-white. It's a card they can race, but it's a card they cannot answer. And as Andrew's board is empty, racing seems like a great idea for Yarbrough as he resolves Assemble the Legion.
And it shows you just how good it is in this matchup because he had the choice between casting Elspeth and Assemble, and he went with Assemble.
Yeah.
So, Hero's Downfall can answer Elspeth, but there is no card in Andrew's deck that can answer Assemble the Legion.
Well, Andrew's going to start looking, though, then for a clock. He starts with Underworld Connections on a Swamp, immediately draws a card off of it, and he'll go for another Thoughtseize. That puts him at 11. And it looks like he will get that Elspeth before it hits. Though there's a lot of stuff for him to fight through. There's Syncopate, Dissolve, Azorius Charm, and Elspeth. It's going to be hard for him to race through a hand like that.
Yeah, and this kind of shows you a couple turns ago, if Chris actually led with the Elspeth instead of, if Chris dealt with the Blood Baron with the Elspeth instead of the Supreme Verdict, his board state right now would be Assemble and Elspeth, almost auto lock for a deck like this against Black-White Midrange. But fortunately for Andrew, he's able to deal with the Elspeth with the Thoughtseize, so he's still giving himself some opportunities here to kind of win.
Yeah, even so, Chris is far ahead. Assemble gets one counter. He's going to make a first token on it. Like I said before, Andrew is going to be forced into a racing situation here.
Yeah, and a card like Blood Baron could actually erase the Assemble tokens because they're white-red, so they can't actually block the Blood Baron. Unfortunately, Chris does have multiple counter spells to stop a Blood Baron, and he also has Supreme Verdict as a way to answer.
All right, so a draw there for Tenjum. He's down to 9. And he's going to start with a Pack Rat. That's another way he can try to race the Assemble. But as you said, Supreme Verdict would be an answer there.
Yes.
Yarbrough's going to draw a card. He drew into another Elspeth.
So Yarbrough's going to add another counter to the Assemble Legion, get 2 more tokens, and likely going to see Elspeth just come down here.
Yeah, and with a grip of Dissolves, it's hard to see how Tenjum will get this game.
Oh, it looks like Andrew does have a Bile Blight, so he can deal with some of the tokens if he chooses to.
The question is when he wants to do it. He's going to discard Devour Flesh to make another Pack Rat.
So not the worst situation for Andrew. If Chris actually does tap out for Elspeth, he could untap, use Bile Blight on the tokens, and then kill Elspeth with the Pack Rat tokens. So he's still giving himself some outs.
This is going to force Chris to just cast a Verdict this turn instead.
Well, he doesn't know about the Bile Blight, so he might not play around it.
Right. We'll see which one he goes for.
And Andrew's life is at 8 here, so okay, so he's going to go for the Supreme Verdict and just win with the Assemble Legion.
Yeah, correctly identifies that Bile Blight's a card. It's just what's important to him here is just to keep the board clear. He knows that the Assemble will eventually win this game.
The only problem is he exposes himself a little bit to Blood Baron now.
Right.
But he does have that Elspeth still in his hand.
All right. So third token on Assemble brings back the 3 soldier tokens that were destroyed. Yeah, and he also has a pair of Dissolves in hand, so he's pretty well insulated against any top decks.
Yeah, he could probably just pass the turn. He doesn't even need to cast anything if he chooses with 2 Dissolves. I mean.
Well, that swing of 3 means that next turn's swing will be lethal. Even with a board sweeper, he could cast a board sweeper. Next turn he gets 4 tokens. And Tenjum at 4 is looking at very few outs. He's going to go ahead and draw off the Underworld Connections.
So Andrew's now at 3. He did draw a Hero's Downfall, but that can't deal with the Assemble Legion. So
yeah, he's going to cast Desecration Demon. That'll probably resolve. And yep, 4 more tokens from Yarbrough. That makes an army of 7 ready at the gates to deal the final points of damage.
Yeah, Bile Blight can just get countered by Dissolve, so nothing Andrew can really do here.
Yeah, he'll go for it, and the Dissolve is there. We are on to game 2. Chris Yarbrough takes game 1 rather convincingly. He had a starting hand that actually looked pretty suspect.
Especially because Andrew had, 2
Thoughtseizes on the detention spheres, yeah, but Yarbrough was able to hit the lands, hit the removal he needed, and then eventually hit the Assemble.
Yeah, you give Blue-White enough time to top deck, and they will get out of it. And Sphinx of Revelation, probably the best top deck you can get in the format. So Chris Yarbrough wins the first game, and now we're going to go to sideboard here. And what is Chris going to be bringing in for this matchup?
Well, Chris already has some of his board cards in the main. The Assemble the Legion is typically played out of the sideboard. We do see that's in the main for him. Other than that, we see he has extra copies of Bramaz. We've actually been seeing control players bring in Bramaz against black or black variants all day. I would not be surprised to see that continue to happen. Other than that, he could bring in Wear Tear if he wants extra answers to Underworld Connections, though I imagine he will not do that. That's the main play I see on his side.
Yeah, and on Andrew's side of the board, he obviously has a lot of options. He has 3 copies of Duress. He only has 1 copy of Erebos, God of the Dead, but he does have 2 copies of Revoke Existence in his sideboard. So this is something that Mono Black Devotion doesn't have access to, is enchantment removal. So he can bring in those Revoke Existence, and not only can he deal with the Assemble Legion, but he could also deal with the Tension Sphere if he needs to. Definitely an advantage for him. He also has 2 copies of Opposite Art Ghost Council, along with 1 Whip of Erebos. So that combination can be very effective against control decks.
Yeah, I certainly think that's stronger than Blood Baron of Vizkopa in the matchup, or at least stronger than Desecration Demon. You know, there's some of his creatures like Demon is fairly easy for red-white to deal with. Obsidat is very troublesome once it's resolved.
Yeah, he has a lot of cards that he can board in, like 3 Duress, 1 Erebos, 3 Lifebane Zombies, 2 Obsidat, 2 Revoke Existence, 1 Whip of Erebos. He effectively has like 12 cards that are all fine in this particular matchup. So there's definitely a lot that he has to decide about what he wants to bring in and bring out. Bioblight is probably the first card that you want to take out. I mean, even though it can go after tokens, it just doesn't do enough.
Yeah, we saw it have some use, limited use in that game. It gave him some outs in a situation, but eventually it doesn't win the battle that you want to fight. You know, you don't want to be fighting the how do I win in the post-Elspeth board. You want to win the fight before that happens.
He also has 2 copies of Devour Flesh, which aren't very good in this matchup, along with 2 copies of Ultimate Price. I'd expect, you know, some combination, if not all of those 8 cards to come out. And then it's a matter of, you know, do you want to just take out 4 Blood Barons or 4 Desecration Demons? I would argue that Blood Baron's probably a little worse than Desecration Demon in this matchup, just because even though Blood Baron has pro-white and it can dodge cards like Azorius Charm and the Tension Sphere, Desecration Demon is just really big and it comes down faster, and in combination with Duresses and Thought Seizes, you can end the game relatively quickly against them.
So you'd rather have the threat where you clear the way with your Disruption, and you just want something that you can cast quicker.
Yeah, it's just there's not a lot of ways that the blue-white deck can deal with it if you strip away like a Detention Sphere early.
And that's the philosophy behind playing Bramaz in a deck like this, right?
Yep. You know, why not? If you get a curve of like Thoughtseize, Bramaz, Desecration Demon, that's can be really difficult for a blue-white deck to deal with.
Yeah, it's very. They both are very efficient on power. You know, Bramaz is 4 power for 3, followed by 5 power if it can go unchecked.
Yeah, and obviously Supreme Verdict is still going to be a card that you're going to have to deal with. But again, would you rather follow up with a Supreme Verdict with a 6/6 flyer or a 4/4 creature? I mean, again, Blood Baron's one of those cards that could technically race and assemble. So if they cast an Assemble Legion and you follow it up with a Blood Baron, if you can dodge the Supreme Verdicts, it might get you there. So I don't know. It's going to be tough. I'm not sure which one you'd rather have after board.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the build that Yarbrough has done of blue-white-red control. It's actually a lot more red than most blue-white-red control decks you'd seen. I mentioned before that he's playing 3 Mizium Mortars in the main. He's actually cut a Jace from the deck, so he's a little less blue, and he has access to Storm Breath Dragons in the sideboard. So he's really embracing the 3-color part of the deck, more so than I would say most blue-white-red decks you see.
Yeah, this is more like the blue-white decks, blue-white-red decks of the old format, where like Matt Costa used to pilot a lot because you know, they play, instead of Thundermaw Dragon, you have Stormbreath Dragon in your sideboard. But yeah, like definitely leaning on cards like Is It Charm and Mizium Mortars a little bit more than a traditional blue-white deck.
Yeah, he even has access to a pair of Anger of the Gods in the sideboard.
Yeah, that's actually pretty awesome, because that's the wrath that almost no one sees coming, you know?
Right, it's probably the best, it's one of the better cards from Theros that no one seems to play.
Yeah, and that was one of the cards that we thought was going to be pretty popular at Pro Tour Dublin, but end up really not having an impact at all.
Yeah, no one ended up, yeah, I would say nearly no one played it.
Yep, 0 copies in the top 8.
Well, we are underway for Game 2. Both players start out on their respective scry lands. Tenjum we see with Duress and Underwood Connections in his opener. It's one of those scary starts.
And a Whip of Erebos as well. So,
so his Duress will see lands, Mizium Mortars, Bramaz, Supreme Verdict, and Assemble the Legion. So actually no answers already to the Underworld Connections.
Yeah, so Duress can take care of that Assemble the Legion, but Bramaz could come down in a couple of turns.
Yeah, and you imagine he has to just take Assemble, because that's a card Duress is his only answer to, right?
Yeah, you have to take it. I mean, Supreme Verdict is obviously can be annoying, but if you have Underworld Connection and Whip in your hand, you don't really care about that card that much.
Right. Probably the card he wishes he could take most would be the Bramaz, but
Yeah, it
That's
doesn't
not
look like he has any removal spells in his hand right now.
Yeah.
He does have Revoke Existence, so that is one of the cards that we talked about. So maybe he
Maybe he
does
doesn't
decide.
take the Assemble.
Yeah, maybe because he has the Revoke. But again, um,
What else does he want to take?
yeah.
If his plan is to Underworld Connections his opponent, it seems like that's still the card you want to get rid of. You'd hate to strand or Revoke Existence in your hand, though. I think that's what he's thinking of. He's going to take Mizium Mortars.
Interesting. I'm not sure what he had. Oh, he had a Pack Rat, so he might just go turn 3 Pack Rat here. But again, you can't really do that with when your opponent has Supreme Verdict in their hand.
Yeah. Well, second land is still only white-red from Tarbrough. He does have a blue in his hand, though, so he should be safe. And we will see. It's Underworld Connections and Whip of Erebos are the cards in Andrew's hand, along with lands and a Pack Rat.
So this is actually kind of interesting for Andrew here. If he did take the Mizium Mortars in order to get the Pack Rat into play this turn, it kind of makes Chris's turn a little awkward with the Bramaz because he can't really cast it now. He has to kind of just wait and cast the Supreme Verdict next turn.
All right, well, Chris did draw Syncopate for the turn. He's going to go with Bramaz anyway.
All right, so Bramaz comes down, and Bramaz does get trumped by Pack Rat, so Chris basically hoping to draw another answer, like a Detention Sphere for the Pack Rat.
Right, so now that the mana is down, Andrew can make the play of Underworld Connections, draw a card. That one's available to him. Chris does have a Syncopate, but no mana to cast it right now. In fact, Chris doesn't have a blue mana in play yet, which is he does have one in his hand, but he has not revealed it.
Yeah, so he could be kind of sandbagging Andrew to kind of bait him to play another threat, like a Desecration Demon here, playing right into Supreme Verdict, although he's giving up a lot of cards to do that.
You know, I don't remember. It's possible that Andrew knows about Steam Vents. I think that's been there the whole time.
No, I think he drew it. He didn't.
Drew
Yeah,
it.
he did not.
He did not have blue when he saw the hand.
Yeah, there was no blue in his opener.
So he's pretending that he's color screwed here.
Yeah, I don't think you could afford to take a hit from Bramaz. I think you have to just play a land and pass, and activate Pack Rat. But we'll see what Andrew does here. He drew a Lightbane Zombie for the turn, so it even makes it harder for him.
Yeah, I mean, you really hate to pass up on the opportunity to resolve connections and draw a card.
Yeah. So here comes the Steam Vent. He's going to take 2. And now Chris is in a tough spot. Was he just allow Bramaz?
Yeah, Bramaz is going to attack.
So it looks like he's going to try to 2 for 2.
Two for two.
He's going to try to get Andrew to discard a card.
The worry is if Chris has something like War Leader's Helix or even Izzet Charm, that would be pretty wrecking right here.
Yeah, but I don't think you can afford to just allow, like, this was your line.
Right. Once you decided you weren't casting connections, this is what you were doing.
Yeah, and he has some information, like he knows what's in Chris's hand.
He knows most of Chris's hand. Yeah, he knows about the follow-up Supreme Verdict.
So let's see here. Andrew's still debating what he wants to do. I mean, his line was basically, I'm going to leave up mana for Pack Rat, but I guess when Chris attacked so aggressively, without really even thinking about it, now Andrew maybe is double second-guessing himself.
Yeah.
And thinking maybe Chris does actually have a trick here.
Well, he's going to go ahead and still activate Pack Rat there. He's going to discard a Whip. But now you're right. It's not a 2 for 2 anymore if this trade happens because he's discarding more cards to Pack Rat. I mean, he knows about Supreme Verdict, so he can't actually just all in on this play.
I'm actually surprised he didn't just double block the Bramaz, though.
I agree. That was what I
like
thought. I assumed that was the line.
I assumed that was his play.
But it's possible. Let's see what he's going with. He does have Revoke land, and Underworld Connections.
Because now if he tries to lead with Underworld Connections, then it just gets countered.
Well, it looks like he has one. Yeah, he has something else here.
Yeah, and now this can be terrible for Andrew because now he won't be able to activate Pack Rat again. He's in the same position as last turn. What does he just take another 4 damage from Bramaz?
Yeah, he's going to go for Underworld Connections, but now it's going to get countered.
I think he's got Syncopate.
He had the Syncopate. If Andrew wanted to resolve this, he should have gone for it the turn earlier when he was tapped out. Now he's going to lose his Underworld Connections to the Syncopate.
Yeah, and he's got the 2 2/2s in play, but you know we know Chris attacked with Bramaz last turn, so there's no reason he won't do it again. Looks like he just has a Supreme Verdict in his hand and some lands.
Yeah, well, he still has the Assemble the Legion that was left there.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So, yeah, Assemble's going to come down here, and
yeah, Andrew has saved the revoke
has a revoke.
for it.
Yeah. So, and now I wonder if Chris knows he saw he duressed me. He didn't take Assemble. Does he have an answer for it? Do I wait and try to cast it with Dissolve backup because it's so powerful, or do I just go for it?
Well, I mean, the real thing I think if you're Chris is you're thinking, do I need, he doesn't have double blue for Dissolve, so that plan might not work. But he does have looks like another Syncopate.
He's got a Halidon in his hand.
Does he cast anything, right?
I think he might want to just play a Hollow Fountain, untap, take 2, and pass back.
Right.
It depends on what Andrew does here, but
the board state's really good for him right now.
It's really not that bad for him. He's basically he's got chump blockers even for pack rat right now. And Andrew's just left with 2 cards left in his hand.
Okay, so the swing happened. It looked like the cat token came in as well.
So Andrew, it looks like Andrew's convinced that Chris has a Azorius Charm or some sort of trick spell in his hand.
Yeah, Chris tanked a long time on that block.
So now Andrew could, he can actually cast Revoke Existence on the Assemble and then activate a pack rat again on his turn. So
yeah, but Andrew still knows about Supreme Verdict, so he's got to be wary of activating pack rat.
Yeah, but I think he still has to activate pack rat, triple block the Bramaz, right? I mean, he can't just keep taking hits from Bramaz. He's got to make Chris.
No, he's got to do something here.
He's got to make Chris use a Supreme Verdict if he's going to.
Yeah, and if he's not prepared to triple block, I don't know. Then I'm surprised he didn't make the connections on turn 4. Let's see. Yeah, he's worried about a trick here. But it's why he's not blocking.
But if he makes a 3rd rat and he triple blocks, then I don't think you have to worry about a trick.
That's what he's going to go ahead and do.
I mean, the odds are he's not going to have 2 tricks.
No, you're going to trade it with the Supreme Verdicts that you know about.
Yeah, so that's exactly what happens. Andrew's going to triple block here. Chris does not have a trick at all, so he's just going to kill one of the rats. And I'd have to imagine Supreme Verdict is going to come down here. So, yep, exactly the scenario.
2 rats, 2 cats, both hit the bin, and now the board is clean. We have 6 lands of Yarbrough to 5 on Tenjum. Yarbrough does have a Dissolve and another land. That's it. Tenjum, not with too much more. He just has a Bioblight, I believe. And a freshly drawn Ghost Council.
Wow, so great draw. Great draw there from Andrew. Very difficult for Chris to deal with Obsidian. Obviously, Supreme Verdict won't get the job done. I believe he only has Azorius Charm.
That was the one turn where Chris was going to be tapped out, and that was quite the creature to draw on that turn.
Perfect timing for Andrew there. And Chris just draws a land for the turn. He's still got the Dissolve stranded in his hand. Andrew doesn't even need to attack with Ghost Council. I wonder if he's going to bother thinking that, like, if he played around the Azorius Charm earlier with the pack rats, then, well, now he's got perfect information. So he's going to cast a Lifebane Zombie. That will get dissolved. Chris can't allow him to see his hand yet. Chris is going to keep the card on top of his library. And, yep, Ghost Council will come down. Andrew's no longer afraid of Azorius Charm.
And it's not there. So Yarbrough down to 9. Draw there is no help. It's another land, but we do have a Jace, Architect of Thought from Yarbrough. And it's going to dig for an answer. So once there is a resolved Obsidian, Elspeth and 2 others, he takes the Elspeth. There are very few cards that Yarbrough has that can actually answer it. Faded Retribution, which is a 1 of in his deck, is I believe the only card he has. He does have some Renounce the Guilds in the sideboard. He could have brought those in the matchup. If he has, then he has a second answer.
Andrew, looks like Andrew did draw an Elspeth last turn. He doesn't have a 6 mana, though, so Thoughtseize will take out Elspeth.
Well-timed Thoughtseize. And Obsidian for 5 more puts Chris down to 2. That 2 damage will happen on Tenjum's upkeep. So he's going to need to draw Sphinx's Revelation. And then some. And he does not have one. That will be the game for Tenjum.
Wow, so a timely drawn Obsidian for Andrew is able to get him the second game, despite the fact that, things were looking
I felt like
okay for Chris for a while there.
I felt like he was rescued a little bit by the Obsidat in that game.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Early on, I think he wasn't sure which plan he wanted to be on. And he ended up a little bit behind. He ended up trading the whole board, which is a position which is usually, I would say, if both players are top decking on an empty board, that's a position that favors blue-white-red, but by no means heavily favors blue-white-red. And in that situation, Tenjum was able to win the top deck war.
Well, I thought Chris played his part exactly the way he's supposed to. I mean, when your opponent leaves mana up for pack rat, I think you have to attack with Bramaz there. He probably just expected Andrew to make a rat and double block there, and then cast a Supreme Verdict, which is exactly what happened later on in the game.
He doesn't actually have to cast the Supreme Verdict there, because the Bramaz will trade with both rats. Because when the one rat will die, the other one will become a 1/1.
That's right.
Which is probably why Tenjum declines the trade, but it still doesn't explain, I guess, why he's not making Underworld connections when he has the chance to.
Yeah, he could make it. He could do it. If he's not going to trade there,
right?
He could do it. He could cast it that turn. It'll get to resolve, and then he can start drawing cards. Although he's under a lot of pressure with Bramaz. Like if he's basically not going to block until he gets to 2-3 pack rats in play, then I still think it's fine to double block there.
I don't mind trading the pack rat in the card with Bramaz.
Yeah, you basically trade pack rat for Bramaz knowing your opponent has a Supreme Verdict.
And when you're playing a Underworld Connections game, Verdicts becomes much less of a card.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, we're going to be going to Game 3. I'm still impressed on how good Bramaz is against these black-white decks right now. Against like these black base decks, all the Thoughtseize style decks.
Well, it's the same thing we kind of saw with BBD's matchup, where we kind of thought it might be good against the black deck, but the black deck keeps putting you in these positions where they force you to cast Supreme Verdict.
Right.
So it's kind of a tough spot to be in. I'm with you. I'm not quite sure how much I like it. There are times where I honestly haven't seen it be that amazing for the blue-white player anytime.
It was good there for Tarbrough, I think. It put a lot of undue pressure on Tenjum, but then at the end of the day, that pressure didn't amount to anything.
Yeah, it didn't really matter because he still ended up losing to an Obsidat. But either way, I don't think it helps you win the games that you're going to lose, like the Underworld Connections games. It's possible, but in general, I think they're just able to draw too many cards that kind of force your hand a little bit, like even pack rat.
When you're playing a deck like blue-white control, the problem is that any creature you board in, if you're going to start attacking your opponent, has to be able to deal 20 damage on its own. Yeah. Right? The rest of your deck's very poor at dealing damage. So when you do get something like Bramaz that gets 10 damage in, that's actually, you didn't really accomplish much. I think it's been really impressive to me in the Bant decks, where we've seen games like Bramaz into Kiora, and Bramaz is kind of like a glorified wall for her. That was really a really powerful interaction, I felt.
Yeah, I love it as a blocker in certain matchups, and I love it against certain control decks that you're not forced to cast Supreme Verdict. But in this particular matchup, it's tough because you can just get trumped by a card like Blood Baron.
Right. They still are giving their opponents enough time to draw their heavy hitters, and Bramaz can't go toe-to-toe with 5 drops.
Yeah. So and if you're not playing, like, he has 3 copies of Bramaz in his sideboard, so it's not like he's guaranteed to get one on turn 3, and that's really where you want it. You don't want it late. I don't think it's really going to matter that much later in the game because it's just going to get trumped by cards like Elspeth anyway. But we'll see how Chris goes. Again, Chris really just needs a Symbol Legion. That's really the card he cares about the most.
Well, as we saw there, he had one, and the Revoke Existence has played a big role for Andrew.
Yeah, that's true. The fact that Andrew now has ways to answer it definitely makes it a little harder for Chris. But I still think the fact that Chris has cards like Sinstrom Revelation and all those Planeswalkers, I still think he's in decent shape as long as he can make sure that Andrew doesn't get cards like Underworld Connections into play. And like you said, Obsidat too. He doesn't really have a good answer to Obsidat.
All right, so we are on to Game 3. Tarbrough on the play with Steam Vents. If you're just joining us, this is the Game 3 of Round 6 between Chris Tarbrough's Blue-White-Red Control Deck and Andrew Tenjum. Matthias Hunt, joined by Osip Levadavich, and we are covering the Star City Games Nashville Open.
Yeah, and it looks like Chris does have a Renounce Digger in his hand, so the question as to whether or not he boarded them in has
before
been
Game
answered.
2 or before Game 3?
I don't think he went to his sideboard for Game 3, so
all right,
he might have had them in there, but Andrew does have an Underworld Connections. It looks like he has an Obsidat, and he also has a Revoke Existence in his hand. So he definitely has all the tools he needs to win this game.
Yeah, he doesn't have any of the early disruption, but the cards that he has that are threats, they hit very hard. And Chris is going to have an answer to them at each point on the curve.
Oh, here comes
and right on turn 3, just as you'd said, there's the draw.
This is certainly going to help with the underworld connections. So Yarbrough's able to go turn 3 Bramaz on the play, which is exactly what you're hoping for.
Yeah, well, what this means is that Andrew can't just cast underworld connections here.
Yeah, well, he can. It's just not. He's going to be under a lot of pressure. I mean, it's scary, yeah. So, because especially if you just get a detention sphere and then you get cracked for 4.
Yeah, now he does have a hero's downfall as well, so he gets a chance to resolve either the downfall or the underworld connections here. You're thinking he'd go with downfall then? Bramaz is just too big to let it hit you?
I think given how good the rest of his hand is, I think he wants to make sure let's just make sure that I don't lose to Bramaz. Because if he goes underworld connections and then Chris draws a counter, well, I mean, he do have a duress, so your downfall will probably resolve, but maybe he just wants to keep any tokens off the play. Like, you're not going to draw a card this turn anyway.
He wants a clean answer to Bramaz.
Yeah, I think he just wants a clean answer. So that's exactly what he does. He has to dodge a Jace here. Jace would be a good draw here, but
it's just a Temple of Triumph. He will scry. It's another Bramaz. It's right on top.
So if one was good, I'm sure the second one would be okay. But again, coming into play on turn 5, not nearly as effective. Andrew's going to be able to play an underworld connections here possibly. He's able
to and I think he has another hero's downfall as well for that next Bramaz. So downfall made on the plains. See if it resolves, and it does. That's huge for Tenjum. And he will follow up with the Scry land. That was the only land he had this turn, so he didn't have the option to put it on an untapped one.
And I actually, he could have tried to slow roll it for a turn to actually cast it with duress backup, but I like this play a lot more.
All right, and Yarbrough shocks for Assemble the Legion on turn as his 5-drop, and once again, Tenjum is going to be at the ready with his answer.
Yeah, so now Tenjum can cast duress, he can draw a card with underworld connections, and he can still cast Invoking Sisters.
Just what black control decks needed in the format was more ways to answer every kind of permanent, and Tenjum has one. And the card advantage train begins with underworld connections. We'll see duress, and he'll get to see what he's up against. 2 renounces, now just 1 renounce, a temple and a Bramaz. Yarbrough is in pretty hard on this Assemble the Legion, and unfortunately for him, it's not going to stick.
Yeah, so he does have a Bramaz, but again, Bramaz will get trumped by
connections.
Connections itself. But it looks like he still can't. He can't cast Obzerat just yet because of the Renounce the Guild in Chris's hand. So he's going to have to try to draw another discard spell. But Andrew's still in pretty good shape. He's got his card drawing engine online, and he has a way to deal with the Assemble the Legion. So
and the existence of the Legion is revoked. Temple of Triumph for Yarbrough. He's going to have to find something like Sphinx's Revelation or Detention Sphere at the very least.
So here comes Bramaz again, the second one, trying to get Chris some action on his side, but Andrew's going to be drawing 2 cards a turn now. He does have, it looks like he has Desecration Demon, but Bramaz can attack through Desecration Demon because of its ability.
All right, and we see a draw from Tenjum again off connections. That is the 3rd card drawn, I believe. You see slowly he is winning the attrition war. Yarbrough down to 2 cards. Tenjum has 6 in hand.
Yeah, so likely going to see a land come into play tapped, and then if he does have a Desecration Demon, or maybe he just, I don't think he wants to cast Obzerat right into Renounce the Guilds. So, yep, we're going to just see a Desecration Demon come down.
Yeah, now Bramaz is actually a great answer to Desecration Demon if he's already gotten 1 swing in. Yeah. Now, unfortunately for Yarbrough, that didn't happen, so he can't attack with it.
Yeah, so he could have attacked with it, but he would have taken a hit back because he attacks.
Well, it would just block. It would block and kill
he gets the trigger goes on before the Bramaz trigger.
Right, so if he already is attacked once and has a cat, then he can continue to tap the demon, but you have to get the first attack in.
Yeah, so it looks like Andrew drew a Thoughtseize for the turn.
That'll eat a negate. And that's kind of one of those plays that you just learn with the control. Like if you have a negate for Thoughtseize, you just negate it.
And plus he's protecting his Renounce the Guilds.
Right. Even if he had nothing, it's just always, it's pretty much just correct to negate a Thoughtseize.
Yeah.
I think, they'll probably just take your negate. If negate's your best card and you need to save it, then they'll just take the negate.
Yeah, Thoughtseize is a pretty good card in general as the counter.
Yeah. And Desecration Demon crashes for Tenjum. That will put Yarbrough down to 10. That's a two more hits. As we see.
But Bramaz can get going now.
Yep, Bramaz can't get going, so he can hold off the Desecration Demon.
So Andrew's been taking some life loss. I think they're trying to both reconcile what each other's life total is. Right now we have Chris at 10, Andrew at 17. We will confirm that that is correct. I think that's what both players are doing right now.
Yep, they're checking life totals. So, yeah, we'll see Andrew has both his other threats in hand. He does have Obsidat and Blood Baron. He knows that there's a Renounce the Guilds in Yarbrough's hand, though.
He might still want to just since he has a Blood Baron, he might want to just run out one of the either Blood Baron or Obsidat right now. And sure, he'll lose it to Renounce, but at least the other one will
win the attrition fight. Just make your opponent 1-for-1.
Yeah.
All right, so Blood Baron's cast, and that will get renounced. Now Yarbrough out of cards. He's playing off the top of his deck. Bramaz will swing. That puts Tenjum down to 11, thanks to both the Cat King and his Cat Soldier. And the draws another Renounce the Guilds.
Wow, so good draw for Chris. Now
that'll be that moment where Tenjum casts it, and oh, well, I have this Renounce.
The Desecration Demon play can get locked down by Bramaz for the time being. Although Andrew does have a Hero's Downfall, so that won't last forever.
Andrew accidentally flipped the second card off the top. Doesn't matter, he's going to draw it anyway. Neither player saw it. Yeah, there you go. So we'll go down to 10. So 10 and 10.
Andrew, if he draws like a Duress or Thoughtseize here, that's huge for him. Allow him to take the Renounce the Guild and then drop that Obsidat. And Obsidat can make short work of Chris. So yeah, it looks like, again, both players are not sure about the life totals. I gotta say, you know, this the black-white deck, I always, before Born of the Gods, I used to think that what's the real reason? I don't think there's that much value in splashing white because your mana base is a little worse, you lose Night Veil Spectre, and I don't know if you're really gaining that much.
Gaining Blood Baron, but how much is Blood Baron?
Yeah, considering that, like, I see a lot of games won by Grey Merchant.
Right.
So I'm not really sure if it's worth it, but maybe having access to Revoke Existence now, maybe it makes a lot more sense to start playing these black-white Devotion decks because Revoke Existence is just so, like, being able to deal with Underworld connections in the mirror, that is huge. That's something that every mono-black Devotion player would want. So I think the real question is, you know, is it worth it now? Now that you have cards like Revoke Existence, which not only deal with Assemble-Legion, but deal with your opponent's Underworld connections, deal with their Ereboses. Those are two cards that are very important in the mono-black mirror. So maybe Revoke Existence is one of those cards that can make black-white control a more viable option now. I know people play it, but it's not nearly as popular as mono-black Devotion.
Yep, so that was the judge fix there on an accidental card flip. Why you saw two cards on the bottom was that Andrew had scried two cards to the bottom during the course of the game. So he's given a warning. He had to reshuffle his deck to re-randomize it. It was replaced, and now play has continued.
So yeah, it looks like Obsidat is going to come down there, although we do know Chris drew a Renounce the Guild.
Yep, there you go. Right, Andrew's like, oh, well, I see, all right. He still does get the Drain of 2. That's still a pretty good exchange for him. He is a little locked out. That player, I said, you know, boy, he can't let his opponent get one swing with that Bramaz in. That's kind of coming back. Could come back to get Tenjum.
Yeah, well, he does have the Hero's Downfall, so...
All right, so he still has the SOS if things get bad.
Exactly.
Obviously, he'd rather save that for something like an Elspeth or a Jace.
Uh-oh. Is that what we're going to see here? Wow, what a top deck for Chris.
So Chris is drawing all the outs. You know, with what happened last game, I feel like this is justice.
A little one-outer.
The one-outer right there. And the blue mana up, you know. So it's gonna take two heroes downfalls right now.
He's got he's got the discard spells, but he just has a Hero's Downfall. That's it. He
needs two of them, right, to kill this Aetherling?
Yeah, he can't deal with Aetherling right now. So Yarbrough's going to sacrifice the token to the Desecration Demon trigger. It becomes an 8/8.
All right.
It looks like, I mean, Aetherling is going to get
be lethal
fogged
next.
For the turn.
Yeah, this is, I mean, the problem is that Yarbrough's going to have 4 blue up for it next turn, so it'll take 5 downfalls to kill it once on the untap, it's not dying anymore.
Although, yeah, so Bramaz, like you said, Bramaz is holding back the Desecration Demon, so Andrew he can't afford to cast Hero's Downfall on the Brahmas now because he will just lose to the Aetherling on his turn.
Yeah, so the question is, Andrew has about 1 turn to stay alive. The question is, how is he going to do it? He needs to win in that turn. He can't, he can't answer the Aetherling because he doesn't have the answer right now. So he has to find a way to sneak damage across, whether it's shoving black permanents on the board and hoping to draw a Gray Merchant. Well, he doesn't play Gray Merchant. He's black-white.
If he draws 2 removal spells, if he draws Devour Flesh, Hero's Downfall, or like 2 removal spells, he can fog for the turn. So he only needs 1 hit with Desecration Demon.
Right, but he's not going to get that. Brahma's got to swing this turn and made another Cat Soldier. So Desecration Demon is still, sacrifices are still being made. Tenjum goes down to 3 off this hit from Brahma's, and this may be it.
So he has to draw 2 removal spells basically this turn.
Yes.
Oh,
and that's
that
a swamp.
It's
going to go to 2. I don't think he has a draw that will get him out of this. We will see. It is a Thoughtseize. That will not work. Thoughtseize Duress and lands in Tenjum's hand, and Yarbrough will win 2 games to 1 over Andrew Tenjum with a comeback victory from Andrew in Game 2, met only by a comeback victory the other way from Yarbrough.
Aetherling.
Yeah.
Don't fall asleep on Aetherling, ladies and gentlemen.
That card has always been excellent against the black decks. They have no actual answer to it.
Wow, Aetherling. We're talking about Elspeth. We're talking about Brahmas. We forgot about Aetherling.
Forgot about that guy, yeah.
Yeah, Big Daddy comes down for Chris just in time and seals the win for him. And Chris Yarbrough moves to 6-0 now.